Okay, wait one more minute. See, people, did all of you attend the what do you call it? The review session or something, whatever you call it. I actually did he say the? I mean, I know he gave like a practice midterm, but did he say the questions were like similar or like was it just practice?
He said the questions would be similar, just not as long.
Okay. Okay, so I thought about it. So I'm planning on covering today like everything, up to 3.3, which is what the midterm goes up to. But like Thursday, right? I'm I'm supposed to go over like, everything after. But like from experience, right? Like if midterms on Friday and I go and midterm goes up to like section 3.3, and then Thursday like if I go over 3.4, 3.5, like the two things like will happen. Like a lot of people will like not care about it, or like they will, but they will just forget it and just focus on midterm stuff. So I think, how about this? Would it be better if Thursday I just make it like office hours, discussion session as office hours for like last minute midterm questions, if any of you have any? Like, so I'll make Thursday like, last minute question day. Is that better for you all, or? Yes, so Thursday I would just like, sit here and if whoever has questions just ask it. Yeah. So it'll just be like office hours. Okay. Great. So let's start. So we have derivative of trig functions. So again, people in the past have used the limit definition and actually, done figured out derivative of sine is cosine, derivative of cosine is negative sine. Obviously, I don't know. Do you all like use respondus or something? Is that how it's gonna work, or do you just take it without video? Because I mean, if you're taking it without video, you don't need to memorize this, right? So do know, like, if this was like an actual class, you would have had to memorize it. But I guess here, right, just put it all on a paper and just, yeah. If there's no respondus, then like just write these formulas down, right? You don't have to memorize it.
Which one? What is this one says? D over x tan gen of s. Is that sec? I can't see. Is that a k?
Oh, sorry, secant squared
Okay, secant squared, and then what's next to it?
of x. I mean,
Okay, there you go. I can go with
yeah.
that. Thank
Sorry.
you.
Yeah. So, and then finally, d dx of cotangent of x is. So obviously, I mean, if since you have these formulas, but if you forget, you really only need sine and cosine, right? Because tan is just like sine over cosine. The rest are like just fractions of sines over cosines, and then to take derivative of that, you use quotient rule, right? So there are special limits you should memorize. Uh, proving it requires like I guess more like geometry and trig. For now, if you want to actually know why these limits are true. Later on, there's an easier way to prove it without trig. It's like the cheat code to like limits, which is why you learn it at the very end, or else like every limit problem becomes easy. So theta goes to 0. So no, this is not intuitively obvious, right? Because if you plug in 0, you get sine of 0 is 0, right? You get 0 over 0. So it's kind of not obvious what the, cancellation is here. But just have these special limits in mind, because they might, I don't know, he might test on this. Okay. With that being said, product / quotient rule. We'll be doing a lot of that today. So he said the midterm goes up to 3.3, so there's no chain rule, right? Assuming I have the, I guess from my version of the book, there's no chain rule. So you have product rule. So do not, derivative. So let me just write, never do this. Yeah. Not equal to, right? It's not just derivative. You take derivative of both, right? So do not do this. So from here, right, it's actually, it's derivative of one, and then you take the other plus derivative of the other, and then you take basically you pick and choose. So f of x, and then you take derivative of g of x, and then you take derivative of f of x, and then you multiply by g of x. Yeah, so just take derivative of one times the other plus derivative of the other times the old one. So most books would write it like this when it's not, when it's sort of implied what the variable is, right? So fg prime plus g, oh yeah, gf prime. I mean, if you like, you can also do, f prime g plus g prime f, whichever one, makes more sense to you. Quotient rule, right? So what happens if you're dividing? So if you're dividing, right? Again, let me just emphasize, it's not, the easy way out, right? It's not equal to, do not do this. So, right, it's actually equal to, similar to product rule. On the numerator, you have d dx, same thing, derivative of one times the other, except you subtract. So minus f of x, and then d dx of denominator, yeah? And then over g of x squared. So the better way to write this, without the, if we all know we're taking derivative with respect to x, it's f prime g minus g prime f over g squared. Yeah. So let me just say, as a corollary, right? You could, so remember how if I ask you take derivative of 3x squared, you would just not care about the 3, right? You would just say a derivative of x squared is 2x, and then it's 3 times 2x, which is 6x, right? You could use product rule. It'll be a really, you'll be wasting your time. But I'm saying, like, you could use, say, this is my f, this is my g, right? Then what's derivative? It's f prime g plus g prime f. What is f prime? What is derivative of 3?
0.
Yeah. So and then plus g prime is 2x times f is 3. So you could use product rule, right? No one says you can't, right? But in this case, just use the fact that constants just factor out. Okay. Everyone clear so far? So we'll be doing a lot of examples with, product and quotient rule today. So let's do easy to hard, I guess. So find f prime of x, right? Ran, I guess instead of y, I'll write f of x. F of x is, oh right. Since your midterms on Friday, I emailed the professor to ask him if I still have to give a quiz this, because I normally give quizzes on Friday, right? So if the midterm's on Friday, it seems weird to give a quiz as well. But he still hasn't answered me yet. So I'll send a announcement if like there's no quiz this week. Okay. So how would we do this? So maybe to make stuff less confusing, because I use F and G, right? Let's use H. So you identify that we're multiplying, right? So you basically let this be your F and let this be your G, right? Then the derivative H prime of X is like F prime G plus G prime F, right? So what is F prime? Yeah, 3x squared times e, and then g is just e to the x, and derivative of e to the x is what? Yeah. And so if it helps, just write it out, right? So this is, I mean, this is good enough, but I tend to like to write the e to the x to the right. So yeah. Okay, now what if h of x is root x? So obviously when he gives the problem, it might be f, right? But just to make things, just to not confuse with this formula, I use h. So on like midterm, you don't have to write this, right? I'm just doing this so we all see what we're doing. We're doing it really slow. So again, what's the main operation here? The main operation here is dividing, right? So if I'm dividing, right, you basically call your numerator F, denominator G, right? So from here, right, H prime of X, if you remember quotient rule, let me just write like this. Oh, this should be H prime. So H prime is F prime G minus G prime F over G squared, right? So basically you're just substituting, you calculate. So H prime of X, the bottom is G squared. So it's root X plus 1 squared, right? And then what's derivative of root X? Yeah. If you like, this is one way to write it. Base power rule, right? So here, root X is just X to the 1/2, right? So if you take derivative, you bring the 1/2 down, and then you subtract 1, right? Power rule. So, and then I multiply by G, and then I subtract derivative of G, which is the same thing, right? Derivative of root X plus 1 is the same as derivative of root X, because derivative of 1 is 0, right? And then I multiply by F. Yeah, and then you could simplify this if you want. I'm just gonna keep. That's another thing with the midterm. I'm not sure like how much you have to simplify, but this is 1/2 plus 1 over 2 root x minus 1/2. So it should be this, I believe, right? 1 over 2 root x. I'll just bring the root x to the bottom. Squared. 2 root x. Everyone clear so far with product rule, quotient rule? So it's easy if it's one operation, right? So let's do something with 2. Let me just make it up.
1031.
Sorry, I always have caller ID. Let's do something like
Call from.
yeah, let's do this. So this is read as x times sine x. Yeah.
Call from. 1031
So
316.
yeah, so again, let me ask, what is the main operation here? What rule am I using?
The quotient rule.
Yeah, so this is f, this is g, right? So h prime is f prime g minus g prime f over g squared, right? So basically you do this, you rewrite as much as you can, right? So what you say is, okay, there's h of x, g squared, that's just tan squared, right? Now you come to your first issue, right? You have f prime, which a priori you don't know what it is, right? So let's fill in everything you know, right? F prime times g is tan x minus g prime. So assuming you have the, chart, derivative of tan is secant squared, right? And then I multiply by f, so x sine x, right? So once you figure out what f prime is, you are done. Agree? Now, how do you find f prime? How do you find derivative of x times sine x? What's the operation here?
You'd have to use the product rule.
Yeah. So this is why I should have used like numbers, but f of x is x sine x, right? So if I call this, let's call this f1 of x, f2 of x, right? Then f prime, if you remember the product rule, it's f1 prime f2, right? Plus f2 prime f1, right? So I take derivative of f1, which is derivative of x is 1 times f2, which is sine x. So 1 times sine x is just sine x. And then I'm adding f2 prime. Derivative of sine x is cosine, yeah, times f1, which is x. So sine x plus x cosine of x. So, using this, right, f prime is sine x plus x cosine of x times tan x, right? So I'm replacing f prime minus secant squared of x times x sine x over tan squared of x. Everyone clear? So really, like, the only way to trick you is to, like, I mean, like, the rules are clear, right? So the only way we're going to trick you is like combining rules, right? So maybe like a product within 2 or 3 products, or like yeah, or like a product and quotient rule, like just combining rules to like confuse you. But really, if you just break it down rule by rule, like it's not that bad. So an example would be like, let's do something like h of x is e to the x times sine x. I did sine x before, right? Let's do cosine. Cosine of x times x cubed. How would you do this? How would you find h prime in this case? So again, what's the main operation here? Yeah, you product rule. So you have a choice, right? You need two functions. Right now you have three, so you might as well just group two of them. So I'm just gonna call this my f and this my g. Yeah. You could have made another choice, right? You could have said e to the x times x cubed is my f, cosine is my g, or any other combination. You'll end up getting the same answer. So again, h prime is f prime g plus g prime f. Now, f prime is easy. Derivative of e to the x is just e to the x times, right, cosine of x times x cubed. So it's really just the same term. Now, the hard part is g prime, right? G prime times f of x, which is e to the x, right? So let me just make this clear. This is f prime. This is g, right? And this is f. So once we find what g prime is, we are done. And how do I find g prime? So g of x is, what rule do I use? Yeah, product rule again. Yeah, so if you break everything down rule by rule, it shouldn't be that confusing, right? So g1 of x, g2 of x, then g prime of x is, I don't want to write all the of x's, so g prime is g1 prime g2 plus g2 prime g1, right? So this is what g1 derivative of cosine is negative sine, right? And then g2 is x cubed. And then derivative of g2 is, the derivative of x cubed is 3x squared, right? Times cosine of x. And then you just plug it in, right? So e to the x times cosine of x times x cubed plus, and then I'm replacing, g prime right here with my answer here. So negative sine x times x cubed plus 3x squared cosine of x. Yeah. And then you can simplify if you want. Everyone clear on this? So okay, yeah, just learn to break stuff down rule by rule. It gets harder if there was chain rule, because there might be like products of chain rules of quotients, which is really what. But since the midterm for now only covers product and quotient, it's not that bad. Okay, so again, you might be tested, like you might be expected to use it in like a, tangent line equation or something. Like, for example, find equation. So I didn't look at the practice midterm, but I'm pretty sure there's a tangent line problem, right? Yes or no? Like, like I'm almost 90% sure he would put a tangent line problem, but of tangent line to the curve at given point, right? So again, like remember in beginning you started doing this by finding f prime using the limit, right? So unless it says use find derivative using definition, right? Use the rules we have, right? You don't need to take limits anymore. So y equals e to the x cosine of x plus sine x at 0, 1, at 0, 1. So how would you do this? So I have the point, right? My point, to find equation of a line, I need a point and a slope, right? So I have my point, if I call this h of x, right? And then my slope, again, it says this tangent line at this x value. The slope is h prime of 0, right? So let's find h prime of x, right? So this is just e to the x cosine of x, the derivative of this plus derivative of this, right? Now, derivative of sine x is cosine of x. And what's derivative? And how do you find derivative of e to the x times cosine of x? What rule do I use? So let's call this, yeah, product, right? I'm just gonna skip writing, f prime g prime. So derivative of e to the x is e to the x, right? Plus derivative of cosine of x is negative sine of x. So I'll just put a minus sine x e to the x, right? Plus, yeah, so this is h prime. Everyone agree? So from here, right, what's h prime of 0? If you know h prime of x, what's h prime of 0? The hard part is knowing what cosine of 0 is and sine of 0 is. So let me ask that first. What's sine of 0? Mm-hmm. And what's cosine of 0? Yeah. And then e to the 0 is just 1, right? So this is 1 times 1 minus 0 times 1 plus 1, right? So your slope is 2. So this is 2. So your answer is y equals 2x plus 1. Everyone good? Like equation of tangent line is just at a point, you have your point. So find the slope, and to find the slope, you use your derivative rules, right? Unless it says use definition, right? Okay. So I feel like I don't know what he means by similar, right? But I'm gonna put questions I see a lot on previous midterms. Like these questions come up a lot. So let's do an example. F of 5 is 1. F prime of 5 is 6. G of 5 is negative 3. G prime of 5 is 2. Find f times g. Basically, the multiply we normally don't write. So let me just write what the book. F times g prime at 5. What is this? Yeah. So again, do not this is not. A lot of people would just do 6 times 2, right? do not just do this, right? Like um again, you the derivative of a product is product rule, right? So this is f prime at 5 times g of 5, right? Plus g prime at 5 times f of 5. Everyone see that? Because I mean, f g prime at x is f prime of x g of x plus g prime at x f of x, right? So f g prime at 5 is f prime of 5 g of 5 plus g prime of 5 f of 5. I mean, it's product rule, right? Does everyone see that? So like again, some people will be tempted to just write this, right? So remember, it's product rule. So this is 6 times negative 3 plus, what is that? 2 times 1. 6, negative 16? Yeah. Everyone good? Or understand what I mean? So, okay. So let's do something more, right? What's this? So same exact idea, right? If you remember the quotient rule, you square it, right? And then it's f prime 5 g of 5 minus g prime 5 f of 5. By the way, the order in this case matters, right? Like you take derivative of numerator first, like, and then it's minus derivative term of denominator, right? For product rule, it didn't matter because a plus b is b plus a, right? Like 1 plus 1 is, I mean, 1 plus 2 is 2 plus 1. But like here, like 1 minus 2 is not 2 minus 1, right? So make sure you got the right order. Now from here, it's also just plug in. See, like if you know how to do the problems, it becomes fairly simple, right? So from here, what's g of 5 is -3, so -3 squared is 9, right? So -20 over 9. Yeah. This might, confuse people. If you just memorize by like letters, yeah, because normally we do like the formula is like derivative f over g, right? So instead of thinking like this, think like, it's denominator square, right? And then numerator, derivative of numerator times denominator minus derivative of denominator times the numerator. Yeah. So I think that's the better way instead of like thinking like f and g, because they can mix this up. So from here, g prime 2 times, so it's 2 minus 6 times -3. So 6 times -3 is -18. So I could just change this to plus, right? Over s squared of 5, that's just 1, right? Because f of 5 is 1, 1 squared is 1. This is 20. Everyone good with this? So let me just make sure you understand. So this might get a little hard. The last part might get a little harder, but it's the same exact idea. G of 4 is 5, f prime of 4 is 6. So we'll go easy to hard, yeah. So find, so the question for all these parts is find h prime at 4, right? Where h is this. So let's do something easy, like h is 3 times f of x plus 8 times g of x. What is this? So h prime at 4 is what? Let me just put it that way. So this is not a trick question. So you should be able to answer this very fast. So what's derivative of 3 times f of x? So I mean, if you don't like this is just this, right? Yeah. So f prime at 4 plus 8 times g prime at 4. And then you just plug it in, right? So 8 times 3, right? 18 plus 24, 42, I think. Right. So again, I'll let you try, B, C. So B is h of x is f of x, g of x, right? So you use product rule. And then This is for B. And then for C, it's the quotient. So I'll let you try for practice. Yeah. So let's do part D. G of x over f of x plus g of x. So what do I do here? Good. Use quotient rule, right? So h prime of x is quotient rule. Remember, I squared the denominator, right? So this is f of x plus g of x squared. And then it's derivative of numerator, which is g prime of x, times denominator, which is this, right? Minus derivative of denominator, which is f prime of x, plus g prime of x, times the numerator. Everyone good with this? It looks, might look scary at first, but all we're doing is using quotient rule. Yeah. So we see h prime at 4 is g prime at 4, that's a 4, times f of 4 plus g of 4, right? Minus f prime at 4 plus g prime at 4 times g of 4 over f of 4 plus g of 4 squared. Yeah? So if you work this out, right? F of 4 is 2, g of 4 is 5, so 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 squared is 49, right? And then g prime at 4 is 3, and we just computed this was 7. So 3 times 7 minus f prime at 4 is 6, plus g prime at 4 is 3, so that's 9, right? 9 times g of 4 is 5, whatever this number is, right? 21 minus 45 is, yeah. Everyone clear on this? So the reason I feel like this might come up is because it's an easy multiple choice question. So, and like everything's online. So, yeah. Okay. Let's do one more and then we'll call it a day. So example, f of x is e to the x g of x. Where, yeah, so whenever you see on the midterm or something, they give you the values, it's normally just, exactly what we did before. Take derivative, just plug in the numbers. So the question is find f prime of x, f prime of 0. So let's find f prime of x. So what is f prime of x? What rule do I use? Yeah, so derivative e to the x is e to the x, right? Times g of x plus derivative of g times e to the x, right? So again, f prime of 0, like I know, like if you first look at this, it's scary, but just do what it asks, right? If it finds f prime, just take derivative, and then things should work out, right? E to the 0 times g of 0 plus g prime of 0, e to the 0. And all you need to know is e to the 0 is 1. So this is 1 times 2 plus 5 times 1, which is 7. Yeah, everyone clear on this? Hopefully, quotient rule and product rule should be like, at least it should be in your head. You should know how to do it. So yeah, okay. So let me just say good luck on your midterm. I'll just have office hours on Thursday. Yeah. I'll see you Thursday if you have any questions.